What do you say? What do you say? It's Go Pack Go all day. Holy smokes, it's been a while since I made a video, but I'm back. And I took a break because when your team loses so badly, it's really tough to talk about it. I did have that one, the last game that I talked about, and highly disappointed, highly disappointed. But overall, this video is about the how I would evaluate the season this past season, the 2025 season. The Packers out the gate, they just destroyed the Detroit Lions, and they kind of sort of had to. They played the first game at home in the longest time ever. It's been since 2008 or something crazy like that since the Packers played at home as the first game of the season. So they just dismantled the Detroit Lions, okay? Detroit Lions, they were without Ben Johnson. So the Detroit Lions were just a different team this season. But the Packers, they had Micah Parsons added just not too long before this game started. So that kind of threw them off, I think. Packers they just dominated. They won two touchdowns over the Detroit Lions. And then the following week, they go and they beat the Commanders. And so a lot of people were predicting the Packers would just lose to the Detroit Lions and the Commanders these first two games. But nobody thought the Packers were going to lose to the freaking Cleveland Brownies in week 3, okay? Cleveland Brownies, I don't know what the heck happened in this game. The Packers just dominated the first 2 games of the season. I think because of the betting, they're like, hey, you know what? Maybe the Packers just lose in week 3. Lose in week 3 because it will make a whole lot of money for whoever. And in freaking week 4, okay, I thought that the Packers, after barely losing, they barely lost to the Brownies, 13-10. I thought the Packers would have absolutely demolished the freaking Dallas Cowgirls in Dallas on that Sunday night football game. But lo and behold, the Packers freaking tie 40-40. They tied because Devontae Wyatt got hurt on defense. It kind of hurt the Packers defense somehow, some way. And so the Packers just couldn't handle it on defense for some odd reason. I don't know why. Micah Parsons always being held. I mean, I think that's a thing that's been a thing for a while. And I think there was only one penalty against Micah Parsons being held the whole season, surprisingly. But it is what it is, man. The guy brings pressure until he freaking got injured. But then you had a bye week. The freaking Packers had a bye week in week 5. So at this point, the Packers are 2-1-1, and they have a bye week. And then after that, they play so many freaking games in a row. They go up against the Bengals, and they beat the Bengals at home. They had no Joe Burrow, so it was a little bit easier to beat the Bengals. And they had to go up against Flacco for the second time. Because Flacco got traded from the Brownies to the Bengals. Everybody thought Flacco was going to beat the Packers twice this season, but it didn't happen. Then the Packers go all the way out to Arizona. They beat Arizona Cardinals. They barely beat the Arizona Cardinals. They didn't have Kyler Murray. They had their other guy at the quarterback, but Packers still win. They pull out the victory. Then they go to Pittsburgh against the Steelers. I thought this was going to be a tough game for the Packers. However, the Packers beat Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And the freaking Steelers had that little bumblebee uniform looking all weird out there. So at this point, the Packers are 5-1-1. And they go to they play the Carolina Panthers at home. And they barely lose to the Carolina Panthers at home. Who saw this coming? I didn't see it coming at all. It was almost like the Packers offense just stopped playing somehow. But also, Tucker Kraft got hurt in this game. So the injury of Tucker Kraft kind of made the Packers offense a little bit limited because they were using Tucker Kraft quite a bit for a good percentage of the offense in the beginning of the season. So they're without Tucker Kraft, no Devontae Wyatt. And they go up against the Philadelphia Eagles at home, where it was a battle of the defenses. The Packers offense just couldn't get clicking for some odd reason. They didn't were throwing the ball to Golden a whole lot. But yeah, the Packers barely lose another game. So all the games at this point, they barely lose. They barely lose to the Eagles, 10-7. Then they go to the New York Giants. New York Giants without their starting quarterback, but the Packers beat their backup quarterback 27-20. And then the Packers just demolish the Minnesota Vikings 23-6. Absolutely demolished this team. Vikings are just not the same team without Sam Darnold. They're just a quarterback away of being much better, but they also have lost quite a few players for their defense. So Packers win this game. Then they go up against the Detroit Lions, and people thought, oh yeah, the Packers already beat the Detroit Lions in week 1. So this is a redemption game for the Detroit Lions. But some way, somehow, the Packers win 31-24 in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. It was very fun to watch that game. And Micah Parsons was dominating, of course. Then the Packers go up against the Chicago Bears. Man, I didn't know they were going to be that dirty this season, but they were with Ben Johnson as the head coach. The Packers beat Chicago Bears at home. Then the Packers go all the way out to Denver, where it's really tough to play in that situation. And in this game, this is where the Packers season was over. When they lost Micah Parsons, season was over because they lost this game against Denver, which I think they could have come back. They could have came back and won. They didn't. They didn't have the pass rush that they normally do, and they put up 26 points. They should have been able to win this game, but gave up 34 points and lose to Denver Broncos. Then they go up against the Chicago Bears without Micah Parsons. No Micah Parsons here. And the freaking dirty Bears do a headshot on freaking Jordan Love. Headshot to Jordan Love. They go into overtime and they lose somehow. 22-16. No Micah Parsons. No Jordan Love in the second half. And then they go out they play Baltimore Ravens at home. Some way, somehow, they couldn't stop the freaking run. They couldn't stop the run because they didn't have Micah Parsons. They didn't have Devontae Wyatt. They didn't have Tucker Kraft. I think there was a couple other guys that they lost too at this point. They lose the Baltimore Ravens. They couldn't stop the run. No surprise. They lose 41-24 at home. Then the final game of the season, it was a game that they really didn't have to win. So they didn't play a bunch of their starters. So they lose 16-3 in Minnesota. And then, they rested their starters, and you would think that the Packers were going to be somewhat good against the Chicago Bears because they rested so many starters, but at the same time, you're still without some of your top players. No Tucker Kraft, no Elgin Jenkins at center. They had no other guys. They missed so much. They had so many other guys that were injured that hurt them. They had no Tucker Kraft, no Micah Parsons, no Devontae Wyatt. One of their offensive linemen was missing. And how the heck are you going to win a football game without a pass rush? So even though the Packers were without a serious pass rush, it seemed like Rashawn Gary, he played great the first half, but he couldn't do much on the second half. There was no pressure on Caleb Williams, so he had all day to throw the freaking football. Zach Tom injury. He got injured, but there was a chance that he might have came back in this playoff game, but that never happened. I guess it wasn't in the script for the Packers to beat the Bears in the playoffs. So the Packers, they lose the football game against the Bears. There was still, some dirty shots by that same guy on the Bears. I don't even want to mention his name. But the Packers, moving forward, this will be for another video. I think they need to go out there and make all kinds of adjustments. But overall, they did great in the regular season. The first half, they did phenomenal. They had a couple hiccups here and there. It happens with teams, I guess. The betting. I'm not a fan of the betting. I think that kind of dictates a lot of the outcomes of a lot of these football games. But if they make a couple adjustments here and there, this team can go all the way to the Super Bowl. And maybe this upcoming season will be that season. But overall, I was happy to see Micah Parsons on this team. The defense was way more exciting with him on the team versus when he was not on the team. So I'm hoping for that most of these players recover from major injuries, and we'll see what happens there. They're going to lose some players due to free agency because they can't afford everybody, and we'll see how they go about drafting. They got to start off in the second round because they've traded away first-round picks for Micah Parsons, which I think was worth it, by the way. But overall, they had the same outcome as last season. They had the same outcome as last season. I think Matt LaFleur needs to go about things differently. You know, if another team makes their adjustments in the second half, Matt LaFleur needs to make his adjustments in the second half too, and that didn't happen. So there's a disconnect there. Special teams hurt them. You know, McManus was solid most of the season, but then he misses two major kicks in the playoffs. Did this guy get paid off? I don't know. It was weird. The Packers' offensive line, what the hell happened? They played great in the first half against the Bears, but couldn't do jack diddly nothing in the second half against the Bears. But I think just a couple adjustments here and there, and this team will be back on track. But overall, it was a great season. Just the playoffs was a disappointment. So that's all I got to say. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe buttons. And go Pack Go all day. See you in the next one.